There's a melody playing in your headphones right now, or maybe it was yesterday or last week. You hummed it in the shower, tapped your fingers to it in traffic, sang along without thinking twice. But what if I told you that according to ancient Jewish wisdom, certain songs we casually sing are actually spiritual weapons being used against us? What if the rabbis and sages who spent lifetimes studying the mystical dimensions of reality knew something about music that modern society has completely forgotten? Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will change the way you listen to music forever, and it might just explain some of the heaviness you've been feeling lately without knowing why. Before we go deeper into this ancient warning, I need you to do something. If this message is already stirring something in your spirit, if you feel that pull of truth that tells you this isn't just another video, hit that like button right now. And here's what I want you to do. Comment below with these 3 words, guarding my spirit. Type it out. Let me see it, because when you declare that publicly, you're making a spiritual commitment, and that act alone begins to shift the atmosphere around your life. Plus, it tells me you're serious about this journey we're on together, and it helps this message reach others who desperately need to hear it. So pause right now, like this video, and comment, guarding my spirit. I'll wait. Good. Now let's dive into something that might save your soul. You see, in Jewish tradition, music isn't just entertainment or background noise. It's not merely vibrations in the air that make us feel good or help us pass time during a workout. No, music, according to the ancient rabbis and Kabbalistic masters, is actually one of the most powerful forces in creation. The Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidic Judaism, taught something profound. He said that music is the quill of the soul. Think about that for a moment. A quill is what writes, what creates, what leaves permanent marks. Your soul is writing something with every song you sing, every melody you allow to penetrate your consciousness. And here's what most people don't realize. You're not just passively listening, you're actively participating in a spiritual transaction every single time you engage with music. The Jewish mystical tradition teaches us that sound itself was the first creative force in the universe. When God spoke creation into existence, he didn't just think it or will it, he spoke it. Vayomer Elohim, and God said. Words carried on sound waves, infused with divine intention, brought entire galaxies into being. The angels themselves, according to the Zohar, are constantly singing, maintaining the very fabric of reality through their celestial melodies. Music and sound create portals between the physical and spiritual realms. They open gates. And this is where it gets serious, because if holy music opens gates to divine light, what do you think unholy music opens gates to? Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, one of the greatest mystical teachers in Jewish history, spoke about something he called fallen melodies. He taught that there are songs and tunes in this world that contain trapped sparks of holiness, but they've been captured, imprisoned, if you will, by the forces of negativity and darkness. These melodies were meant to elevate the soul toward God, but they've been twisted, corrupted, filled with messages that do the exact opposite. And the tragedy is that these fallen melodies are often the catchiest, the most addictive, the ones that get stuck in your head for days. You know exactly what I'm talking about. That song you can't stop singing, even though something deep inside you feels uncomfortable with the words. That's not an accident. That's spiritual warfare, and most people have no idea they're on the battlefield. Now, here's where this gets personal, and I want you to really hear me on this. The Talmud, which is the central text of Jewish oral tradition and law, warns extensively about something called lashon hara, which literally means evil tongue or evil speech. It refers to gossip, slander, and speaking negatively about others, even if what you're saying is true. The rabbis taught that lashon hara is so spiritually destructive that it's equivalent to the 3 cardinal sins combined: murder, idolatry, and forbidden relations. Why? Because words have power. Words create reality. Words open spiritual doors. And if that's true for spoken words, how much more true is it for words we sing repeatedly, with emotion, with our whole hearts engaged, often in moments when we're most vulnerable and open? Think about the songs dominating the charts right now, the ones playing in every store, every restaurant, every gym, every car radio. How many of them glorify violence, explicit immorality, treating people as objects, accumulating wealth at any cost, substance abuse, revenge, betrayal, or mocking everything sacred? And we sing along. We memorize every word. We let our children hear them. We play them at celebrations and gatherings. According to Jewish wisdom, every single time we do this, we're not just entertaining ourselves, we're literally inviting spiritual darkness to take up residence in our lives. We're giving permission to the Yetzer Hara, that's the evil inclination that exists within every human being. We're giving it fuel, amplifying its voice, strengthening its grip on our consciousness. But it gets even more specific than that. Jewish mystical teaching tells us that there are spiritual beings, angels and demons, that are attracted to or repelled by different kinds of energy. Holiness attracts holy angels. Prayer creates protective barriers. But negativity, especially negativity expressed through the powerful medium of music, attracts exactly what you don't want around you or your family. The Zohar speaks about accusers in the heavenly realm, spiritual forces whose entire purpose is to prosecute humanity, to highlight our sins and failures before the divine court. And what do you think gives them ammunition? What do you think they use as evidence against us? The very words that come out of our own mouths, including the lyrics we sing without thinking. Let me paint you a picture of how this actually works in your daily life, and I bet this is going to sound familiar. You wake up, and maybe you're feeling okay, neutral, ready to face the day. You get in your car, turn on the radio or your playlist, and immediately you're hearing about heartbreak, betrayal, violence, or empty materialism. By the time you get to work, there's a subtle shift in your mood. You're a little more cynical, a little more guarded, a little more focused on what you don't have rather than what you do. Throughout the day, those lyrics keep replaying in your mind. That catchy hook that's actually promoting infidelity or substance abuse, you're humming it while you work, while you eat lunch, while you interact with others. By evening, you feel drained, disconnected, maybe even depressed. And you have no idea why. You think it's just stress or circumstances, but what if it's actually the accumulated spiritual weight of the content you've been absorbing all day through music? The Jewish sages understood something that modern psychology is only beginning to rediscover, that repetition creates neural pathways, and those pathways shape behavior. In Jewish practice, this is why we pray 3 times a day with specific words. It's why we recite blessings over food, over waking up, over seeing a rainbow. The repetition isn't mindless ritual, it's intentional consciousness programming. We're training our souls to recognize God in every moment, to respond to life with gratitude and awareness. But when we repeatedly sing messages of despair, lust, greed, and violence, we're programming our souls in the opposite direction. We're training ourselves to see the world through a lens of darkness, and then we wonder why we feel so hopeless and disconnected. And here's something that might shock you. According to Kabbalistic teaching, when you sing words, you're not just thinking them or saying them, you're breathing them. You're giving them the breath of life. In Hebrew, the word for soul is neshama, which comes from the root word meaning breath. Your soul and your breath are intimately connected. When you sing destructive lyrics, you're breathing death into your own spirit. You're using the divine breath that God gave you, the same breath He used to animate Adam in the Garden of Eden, and you're using it to give life to messages that work against your own divine purpose. Can you see how serious this is? Now let me tell you about the specific song, or rather the type of song, that Jewish teachers say makes the forces of darkness actually celebrate. I'm not going to reproduce the lyrics here because, honestly, you already know which songs I'm talking about. They're the ones that glorify cheating on your partner like it's something clever or fun. They're the anthems that make getting drunk or high sound like the pathway to happiness. They're the tracks that reduce human beings, especially women, to nothing more than physical objects for consumption. They're the songs that mock faith, that celebrate revenge, that treat violence as entertainment, that worship money as the ultimate god. You know these songs. They're everywhere. And the scary part is how normal they've become, how we've been conditioned to think that because everyone's listening, it must be okay. But let me break down for you the 3 specific spiritual dangers these songs create, and I want you to pay close attention because you're going to recognize your own life in what I'm about to say. The first danger is this: repetition creates reality. In the beginning of Genesis, God spoke the world into existence. Yehi, or let there be light, and there was light. The Hebrew sages teach that we are made in God's image, which means our words also have creative power. Not the same magnitude as God's words, obviously, but real power nonetheless. When you repeatedly sing, "I can't trust anyone," or "Love always ends in pain," or "I need substances to feel good," or "My worth is determined by my appearance," you are literally speaking those realities into existence in your own life. You're creating neural pathways, yes, but you're also creating spiritual pathways, channels, through which those exact experiences will flow into your reality. Think about this honestly for a moment. How many people do you know who constantly listen to songs about toxic relationships and seem to only attract toxic relationships? How many people sing along to lyrics about being broke or struggling and can never seem to get ahead financially? How many young people absorb songs that glorify reckless behavior and then wonder why their lives are falling apart? Jewish wisdom teaches that this isn't coincidence, it's consequence. The morning blessings in Jewish prayer are designed specifically to shape our consciousness for the day ahead. We thank God for giving us sight, for clothing us, for making us in His image, for giving us strength. We're programming ourselves toward gratitude and purpose. But if you start your day singing about despair and destruction, guess what you're programming yourself toward? The second spiritual danger is even more insidious, and this is something the rabbis understood deeply. Joy magnifies the message. When you speak negative words in a monotone voice, they have power, yes, but limited power. But when you sing those same words with enthusiasm, with emotion, with your whole body moving to the rhythm, when you experience pleasure and release while engaging with dark content, you exponentially increase its impact on your soul. Music creates what psychologists call emotional resonance. The melody, the beat, the harmony, all of it bypasses your rational mind and speaks directly to your emotional and spiritual core. This is why Jewish tradition has niggunim, wordless melodies used in worship. The tune itself carries spiritual energy, and when combined with holy words, it creates an incredibly powerful force for elevation and connection with the divine. But here's the problem. When that same emotional and spiritual power is harnessed to deliver messages of darkness, When you're dancing and smiling and feeling good while singing about infidelity, violence, or materialism, you're not just accepting those messages intellectually, you're celebrating them emotionally and spiritually. You're telling your Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination, that these things bring you joy. And Jewish teaching is clear: whatever you feed grows stronger. If you feed your evil inclination with joyful celebration of destructive behavior, even if you never actually engage in that behavior yourself, you're strengthening its voice in your life. You're making it harder to hear the voice of your neshama, your pure soul, which is always trying to guide you toward holiness and truth. And this is exactly what the forces of darkness want. They don't necessarily need you to commit terrible acts. They just need you to normalize evil, to make it seem fun and harmless, to blur the lines between holy and profane until you can no longer tell the difference. Let me tell you something that's going to make you uncomfortable, but that you need to hear. The Talmud teaches that there are spiritual accusers who stand before God and point out human failings. Now, this isn't about a punishing God who's looking for reasons to hurt you. Jewish theology is clear that God is compassionate and merciful, slow to anger and abundant in kindness. But there's a spiritual legal system, so to speak, where our choices have consequences, and where negative spiritual forces gain authority in our lives based on the permissions we give them. Every time you sing along to a song that celebrates something God calls destructive, you're essentially signing a spiritual contract. You're saying, I agree with this message. I'm going to give it voice through my own breath and soul. And those spiritual accusers take that contract and say, see, they chose this. They celebrated this. They can't claim ignorance or innocence. And you might be thinking, but it's just a song. I don't really mean it. I'm not actually going to do those things. But Jewish wisdom asks, then why are you practicing? Because that's what singing is. It's practice. It's rehearsal. You're rehearsing attitudes, perspectives, and behaviors. You're training your soul in a particular direction. And the more you rehearse something, even if you think you're just playing around, the more natural it becomes when opportunity or temptation presents itself. This is why Jewish education emphasizes so heavily what you put into your mind and heart. This is why there are laws about what you can look at, what you can listen to, what you can speak about. It's not about being restrictive or joyless. It's about understanding that you are a spiritual being having a physical experience, and everything you consume spiritually has consequences. The third danger is perhaps the most far-reaching, and this is where it affects not just you, but everyone around you. Community influence. When popular songs spread negative values, entire communities absorb them unconsciously. Jewish tradition teaches the concept of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. All of Israel are responsible for one another. We're interconnected spiritually. Your choices don't just affect you, they affect the collective spiritual atmosphere. When a generation grows up singing songs that normalize betrayal, violence, and godlessness, that generation begins to embody those values. We wonder why divorce rates are climbing, why mental health is declining, why young people feel hopeless and disconnected, why addiction is epidemic, why people treat each other with such casual cruelty. Could it be that we've been singing our way into this reality for decades? Think about the children and teenagers who hear these songs. Their souls are even more impressionable, even more vulnerable to spiritual influence. They're forming their understanding of love, relationships, success, and meaning through the content they absorb. And if that content tells them that love is just physical, that betrayal is expected, that substance use is cool, that material wealth is the highest goal, that violence is power, what kind of adults are they going to become? Jewish parents are commanded to teach their children constantly when you sit in your house, when you walk on the road, when you lie down, and when you rise up. We're supposed to be intentionally shaping the consciousness of the next generation toward holiness. But how can we do that if the soundtrack of their lives is teaching them the opposite? And it's not just children. Think about people going through crisis, through depression, through grief, through addiction recovery. Music is often their companion in the darkest moments. What happens when the songs keeping them company are reinforcing despair rather than offering hope? What happens when someone struggling with suicidal thoughts keeps hearing lyrics that glorify death or make light of suffering? Jewish teaching emphasizes pikuach nefesh, saving a life, as one of the highest commandments, overriding almost everything else. How many lives could be saved if we paid attention to the spiritual poison being delivered through popular music? But here's the good news, and this is where Jewish wisdom offers real hope and practical solutions. You don't have to live this way. Jewish tradition is overflowing with music that elevates rather than degrades. For thousands of years, Jewish people have used nigunim, wordless melodies that lift the soul toward God without any potentially corrupting message. There are settings of psalms to beautiful melodies, songs of gratitude and praise, tunes that celebrate Shabbat and festivals, melodies that express longing for the divine, for redemption, for peace. These songs don't make you feel empty afterward. They don't leave you spiritually drained. They fill you up. They connect you to something eternal and true. You can make a different choice starting today. You can curate what enters your ears and your soul. You can choose music that aligns with your highest values rather than your lowest impulses. And I'm not saying you can only listen to religious music, though honestly, that wouldn't be the worst choice. I'm saying pay attention to the messages you're absorbing. Ask yourself, is this song building me up or tearing me down? Is it encouraging me toward my best self or my worst self? Would I want my children singing these words? Would I be comfortable singing this in front of God? Because according to Jewish teaching, you are always in front of God. There's nowhere you can go where the divine presence isn't there, listening, witnessing, responding to your choices. Your spiritual hygiene is just as important as your physical hygiene. You wouldn't drink poison just because it was in a pretty bottle or because everyone else was drinking it. So why would you consume spiritual poison just because it has a catchy melody or because it's popular? The sages teach that we have to guard our eyes, our ears, our mouths, our minds, and our hearts. These are the gates through which either holiness or corruption enters our being. Music is one of the most powerful forces that can enter through those gates. Use that power wisely. Use it to elevate yourself and others. Use it to connect with the divine. Use it to heal rather than harm. So here's my challenge to you. For the next week, pay attention to every song you listen to. Actually hear the words. Notice how you feel afterward. And then make conscious choices. Replace at least half of your playlist with music that uplifts, that inspires, that connects you to something greater than yourself. See what happens.